I always like to look at how the companies that I am involved in add value to other businesses or to society. So in this video, I'm talking about Aduro Clean Technologies and the waste management business, or more specifically, landfill business. So let's have a look.
So how exactly are landfills turning profit out of garbage, and just how much money can be made? When people think of landfills, they usually imagine an endless field of garbage emitting a terrible odor and housing all manner of pests. But modern sanitary landfills today are much more nuanced and a lot less smelly.
A modern landfill is a civil engineering marvel. These are extraordinarily well engineered. They're designed to protect human health and the environment, and at the same time, contain and manage the waste that we generate at 4.5 pounds a person per day in the United States.
When waste is brought to a sanitary landfill, they are disposed into an open section known as the cell. This cell is protected by a layer of reinforced plastic known as the liner that prevents any harmful liquids from leaking out. Any liquid from the waste is collected at the bottom of the landfill and is removed via a series of pipes, gravels, and sand. Meanwhile, above ground, trash is constantly compressed within the cell using bulldozers and other compaction equipment, using daily covers to protect the trash from sun, rain, and pests until the cell reaches its max capacity. Once that happens, either a new cell begins on top or a final cover is placed over. The site is then continuously monitored for up to 30 years to ensure everything is environmentally sound. Landfills make a majority of their revenue even before the garbage makes its way to the pile of trash. Through a tipping fee or a gate fee, landfills charge trucks dropping off their garbage based on their weight per ton. This fee acts as the lifeblood of most landfills across the United States.
Tipping fee gets its connotation because the truck comes in and tips, if you will, and it literally tips up when the trash is driven out of the trailer through what's known as a walking floor. So tipping it's your gate rate. It's the price per ton. And that is the principal source of income.
In 2020, municipal solid waste landfills had an average tipping of $53.72 per ton. That translates to roughly $1.4 million a year in approximate average gross revenue for small landfills and $43.5 million a year for large landfills, just from gate fees.
Okay, so you have a situation where you have a landfill, right? And in the US, I don't know how it is in other countries, we have our trash in two cans. Regular trash and then recycled, where you put plastic and stuff like that. So even though we recycle plastic, most of the plastic ends up in a landfill, right? It just ends up in a landfill because very little gets recycled. Some of it gets sent overseas, in other places, but the recycled part ends up in a landfill most of the time, especially in my city. Like, we actually thought that it was going somewhere. No, it was going to a landfill. So you have a situation where this is a business, a landfill business. So you have like, land, and you put things into the land, right? And then your land is a finite resource. And you get paid, as they said, on average, $50 per ton to fill that resource. At some point, that landfill becomes full or fully depreciated, and you have to buy more land, but then you have to develop more land, you have to get it permitted and all that. So in other words, you get paid $50 per ton to depreciate your asset. That's the landfill business, right? Now, enter Aduro in this scenario. If the landfill business takes 1 ton of plastic and gets paid $50 for it, that ton of plastic is a cost center. You can't do anything with it. It takes up space and it depreciates your asset, right? What if I came to you and I said, Mr. Owner of a landfill, how would you like to make a gross margin or EBITDA of almost $600. That's Canadian, of course, but so let's say we put it into US terms. Over $400 of profit, or let's take it revenue, or about $650 of revenue from that plastic. So, Mr. Landfill owner, you get paid $50 for a ton of plastic, and then that ton of plastic depreciates your asset. How would you like to take that plastic and not put it in your landfill, but turn it into $650 of revenue? Would you be interested? That's how Aduro adds value, right? Of course, anybody would be interested, right? But this would cost to develop it, right? Depending on what kind of unit you have, depending on how much plastic you accept, would determine the kind of unit that you would have to build. So if it's a small unit, it will cost you, 20 million Canadian to build it, or 200 million Canadian to build it. And if you chose a smaller unit, you would generate, EBITDA of about 5 million, or EBITDA of about 50 million. But in this case, you would have to pay Aduro a licensing fee, right? So your EBITDA would be lower, right? Now, if you didn't have the money to finance it yourself, well, when there's value to be added, it can be financed in other ways, right? You could have the city finance it. The city finance it through city bonds, right? Why wouldn't the city be interested in something like this? And if you, Mr. Landfill owner, are not interested in building a unit, well, maybe some other entrepreneur can build a recycling unit with Aduro's technology in your town, in your county, right? And then instead of you receiving $50 for the ton of plastic and depreciating your own asset, you could just make a deal with the owner of the recycling facility and say, I'm collecting 50, I'll pay you 30, and you take that plastic, right? And I am not depreciating my landfill asset. I make $20 on it, and you go ahead and build the facility, make your EBITDA or whatever. Or another situation is that an entrepreneur could build a facility, and the city, instead of sending you the plastic and pay you $50, the city could send the recycled plastic waste to that entrepreneur, and you would just take the regular waste that nothing can be done with it, right? And again, that entrepreneur could finance the build out of this facility with investors, private capital, or the city, government bonds, right? But the point is that it's a situation with the waste management company. You have a situation where Aduro's technology can add value, because at this point, right now, the landfill business is receiving $50 per ton for taking the plastic, and then that plastic is depreciating the landfill asset, and it is a cost center, right? It's depreciating it. There's only a finite amount of space. That $50 worth of plastic waste can be turned into a revenue center that instead of costing you space, it could generate $650 US per ton of revenue. That is adding value. So just wanted to give you an example of how Aduro's technology can be used to add value in the waste management business.